it on all the time, or would you prefer just to turn it off?
He's at daycare. She's got a little. Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, we do. Okay. So, how are you doing? Yeah. So actually, I had
Hey. Hey, Brownie, how are you?
sometimes it's like they plateau.
That's when I showed him and they changed that so it's land.
All right, hey everybody. We're ready to get started. I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for being here for the pre-meeting. Let's do a quick review of the agenda. We've got Tim who's going to give us an update on strategic planning. Jennifer Pike's going to do the monthly collection report. Then we've got an update on the East Asheville Library lease agreement. Several folks will help us out with that. Michael Frew will talk to us about some technical corrections for contracts. There's two other items I'd like to add. This gentleman we have with us wants to get a very short presentation to the board. And so I think, and he's going to be traveling out of the country soon, so I think this is maybe the opportunity to do that. So I think it'll just take a couple of minutes. I sent around an email to the commissioners this morning about some possible changes to the public comment process too, and I put a copy of that on your, for everyone if you haven't seen it yet. And so I'd like to just have like a preliminary discussion of that, as with everything else on our agenda today. No notes on any of this, just kind of preliminary discussion. Are there any other items that any commissioners would like to talk about this morning? This afternoon?
I have one that it's on the board agenda for tonight, and it's the text funding. If you haven't seen that before, I don't know if you want to have any conversations around that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's should we take that up first? Is everyone? Yeah.
Yes.
And again, we're going to talk about that again tonight as part of the the regular agenda with possible decision making on that. But let's have just a preliminary discussion tonight. Let's see if folks have any questions. Okay, we'll take that up first. That's okay. All right.
So joining us this afternoon is Dirk Wilma and Dennis King from AB Tech. As in your packet, you will see that they have made a request of additional funding from the county. It was a deficit of about $500,000. And in going through that budget request, I came up with the funding suggestion for the recommendation to the board of $250,000, which would go towards cellular phones and communication expense for the college. That is a cost that the college has been borne for a while, but they were charging it as a state expense. And the state came back and said it's not allowed, it truly should be a county expense. So I'm recommending that the county fund that $250,000. In addition to the $250,000, I'm recommending $50,000 to go towards a 1% salary increase. to them. If you have any, and I sent that information to you via email. If you have any questions, we can talk about that, and Dennis and Dirk are here to answer any additional questions that you may have around the funding request.
All right. So, Dirk and President Keating, would you guys mind just coming up and let's circle up for a second and chat about really what we're going to be talking about tonight? Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Good to see you guys as always.
Is he low?
She's telling us what to do.
She, did I get the gender
It's
wrong?
all good. It's all
I'm
good.
so sorry.
It's all good. She's got a twin brother, so it happens all the time.
So I guess I'll tee it off. So the staff, county manager has a recommendation for possible additional funding levels. So could you share with us kind of your current perspective on, I know you've been looking at different options for how to address the gap. So with the recommendation from the county manager that the commission has received, what's your updated thinking on that recommendation and whether that be sufficient to meet the budget outlook for the community college this year, or any additional thoughts you want us to?
Let me start by saying that I regret the press coverage, but I think there's not a person here at the county that doesn't understand that we don't control the press. And they were at our Board of Trustees meeting last Monday when the county manager's agreement to the $300,000 and our work on adding another $200,000 in cuts had been made. That had not been made by that time. And so we were still reflecting a $500,000 deficit at that time. I spoke at the time, and I really regret not realizing that the press was in the room. And I mentioned a couple of pretty draconian ideas about eliminating the police force at nighttime, about perhaps some layoffs. Had I known that the press was there and I thought about that, I never would have said anything. The bottom line is that since then, the county manager has come up with the $300,000 number that she mentioned, and we have come up with about another $240,000 worth of savings, so that with this action, with the action that the county manager is recommending, we will be able to say tomorrow morning that we have balanced the budget.
So here are two different numbers, 300 and 250. Is the number 300 or is it 250? That you need.
That unrecommended,
You
sir?
said 250, but I'm hearing that 300 was the number that I have always heard.
A total of 300,000, it was broken into two sections. 250 was to help with communications and 50,000 was salaries. So the total that I'm recommending tonight is 300.
And Mr. Belcher, when we sharpened our pencil, we came up with $248,000 of additional savings. So there should be, if everything worked properly, there should be a little bit of a surplus at the end of the year. The problem is that some of our numbers are weak. We can't control them. One of them is an energy efficiency program that we're going to start at the college very shortly. I can't promise you that the 40,000 there is actually going to be realized. We're going to work on it very hard. But if all of our numbers play out the way they should, we'll be at 248,000 of additional savings on top of your 300, 548.
Right now, we're fixing the buildings, so
Yes.
there's a lot of your energy savings.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the one thing that we put forward. You got all these buildings and it's in a different category. But, here comes energy saving that the people are doing to try to help AV Tech. And will it pull it all the way down? No, but it's going to help, yes. And so your number should change, even if we didn't go what Browning is going to do, looking at the solar side. main thing is looking at what we have today. And the more that they're putting in, and, you know, putting new chillers in it that save energy and different stuff like that. You know, and Dirk, I've had a good conversation with him about this issue. Thanks for the thing I did look at that, Dirk, and the numbers are there. The biggest deal is the Lincoln campus, and that's our big draw. And,
All accurate, all accurate.
uh,
I said everything you're saying is accurate. The Inca campus is a very big draw on campus.
But one thing, in that picture, I would like to see how much rent we're receiving, how much we're basically the beer deal and whatever else the college is doing there is taken in compared to what the light bill and stuff is. Is it covered that $500,000 worth of water, lights and stuff?
Did you say the rent?
Well, you got that one, what the food ventures,
Yeah.
and so they gotta be renter, we're just giving it.
No, they're renting. We did lower their rent in 2014 because the Food Ventures was about ready to go out of business back then in 2014. We lowered their rent, but they are now doing well and they are paying their rent to us. And in addition, every one of the 21, I believe it is, and maybe 23 companies that are incubating, they are also paying rent.
And then we have, but the school covers the brewery and there is a machine shop there.
Correct.
So do we, I mean, you know, are we covering it enough with people in the class for the brewery and machine shop to look at them
To
too?
cover the energy costs, I'm not sure.
It's not just looking at, to help on the energy costs.
Yeah, we can put together some numbers on what we are making out there, what we're earning from rent, and the cost of energy. And then the rest of it is borne by the college.
Yeah, well, I thought
Yeah,
it was-
we'll be glad.
There's other things that we talked about, and we will be a part of the board. I'm fine with that. But looking at that yesterday, it was a surprise, but not a big surprise. Because I'd already talked to people understanding that the old research building is one that really burns energy.
If I could address one position which is on our savings list here, and we have two vacant positions that the county pays for. One is our assistant in the HVAC area. So we have two HVAC people who keep the systems up, preventative maintenance. It so happens that both of those positions, one of those HVAC positions is vacant right now. And as part of the savings that I just mentioned to you, the 248, we're not intending on filling that position this year. That's going to have a negative impact on how much preventative maintenance we can do because we're down to one HVAC person. So I just point that out to you. There are ramifications of the decisions that we're making. I mentioned earlier that we will not lay off anybody, but as positions come open, we will make a determination whether we fill them or not.
But I think your dentist and Dirk, if classes pick up with, you know, students, and the numbers pick up, that gives you more money to be able to look at other things.
It does, but you gotta remember, we always talk about silos being a bad thing. Well, in Dirk's world, silos are what we have to deal with. I can't mix your money with state money. Yes, we operate under a $70 million budget, but that money, let's say 6.5 or so come from the county and they are for certain things. So if student enrollment picked up, we would be making more money for the state of North Carolina. We would earn more in what we call FTE, but I can't use that to fill this HVAC position. That's the county's responsibility. It would be an audit criticism to use it for that purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners?
I mean, just a thought, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this. You know, if you have to have a second HVAC position, just because it's empty, doesn't mean you don't necessarily push that default button and say, hey, there's our savings. And so I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that. I just want to challenge on that, you know, if you have to have that, you know, for the efficiencies, you know, to,
Well, let's
I
follow
wouldn't be
the,
afraid to come back.
yeah.
Is what I'm saying. You know, we'll figure out another way. You know, a lot of times if this spot's empty, the easy decision is just not to fill that spot. Okay, and it may or may not be the right thing to do. I appreciate you looking for those options, but and again, I won't get too far in the weeds on it. I just want to put that out.
Let me respond to that. If we have another vacancy, let's say on a groundskeeper in the fall, after we get the leaves picked up and things like that, it may well be that that's where we will transfer this savings and we'll fill the HVAC position at that time. I have not done away with the position, I put it on hold.
Because maintenance is critical.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what happens.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because when we talked Friday, the three of us, you mentioned the problem that you have with the HVA systems. 3 that are out, 1 in the new building, which surprised me. But I really am concerned when you start to cut out the HVAC position. That's just gonna make matters worse, folks. I mean, I don't think that's the way to go, because that is serious. You know, I can tell you in my previous life, when I was over facilities not for a long time, when you start not doing preventative maintenance on the HVAC systems, you're talking about $300,000 or $400,000 a pop, it could be.
We will put the position on hold as opposed to do away with it. And as soon as we can find a more appropriate position, I kind of use groundskeeper during the winter, although we do have to move snow. We will fill the HVAC position. It is not done away with.
So do you foresee coming back to the board with the energy plan, or with what we might be able to help with, or? I'm kind of, I just changed this, two light bulbs in my house this morning, okay? LED bulbs. And the first LED bulb I bought, my light bulb was $18 for an outside light. I about had a stroke. Because I got a zillion lights in the house, you know, I mean, you get a lot of lights in it. But I did pay $2 a bulb for these LED bulbs, 2 LED 60-watt bulbs. You know, but I think they were less than that. And we just finished our board knows this, but we just finished a new project at a new church sanctuary, 20,000 square foot. I think we have 8 units on that building. And we have 8. We have 1 on our other church. We will pay less operating 8 than we did that one. Simply because of step out investment. A lot of people had, you know, was really, afraid that, oh my gosh, it's going to be a lot of money. But it'll be interesting to see, as we move forward, what what that looks like.
Well, I'm promising you in the cuts that we just mentioned, $40,000 in savings this year. Now I got to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah,
And
I would rather see. Personally, I don't like. It's just me. I'm not speaking board. I'm speaking for myself. I like people having jobs.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with positions, as long as positions are properly paid, and as long as there is an opportunity to make sure that the performance is there, and everybody's doing a good job, and there's good communication. I think particularly a big facility or a big business, which I worked with before, that you can look at these type of investments that many times you can keep a lot of positions, people that are kind of critical to the whether it be a business or whether it be a college. So, I mean, though I don't always agree with my colleagues on how that is done, but there's no question, you know, as you look at long-term investments, you know, the energy savings of your facility that it can have. I believe it makes it safe.
I'll give you just one very minor example. We have far too many space heaters where somebody calls and says, my office is too cold and I can't get the temperature to where I want it to. I need a space heater put in here. Those things are energy drains, even the most efficient ones. So it's one of the things that we will talk about when we talk about saving that $40,000. Am I gonna make some people angry when I take their space heater away? Well, perhaps. But we've got to look at all of our expenses, including LED lights.
Yeah, and there was a lot of great information that you guys produced to outline some of those specific opportunities. So thank you for producing that information. It's circulating that over the last couple of days. But and this is all for the Victoria campus. So there's been pretty good assessments done at Victoria campus to look at what the opportunities are for lighting upgrades, boiler system replacements, control systems and commissioning of systems, installation, et cetera. So that all looks really promising. I'm certainly supportive of doing the low-hanging fruit as soon as possible. It doesn't seem like there's any reason to hold off on doing all of the work that have really great paybacks on them. So I'm certainly supportive of let's do them all now, not 5 years from now, if they're proven cost-effective systems.
Does that give the ones that, when you're talking about low-hanging fruit, the ones that give the fastest return?
Yeah.
When you're talking about low-hanging fruit, is that what you're talking about?
It's pretty detailed.
Rather than like the lowest cost may not.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like some of the boilers, some of the boiler system replacements have savings, but those are expensive items. But a lot of them are some of these are 30, 40 years old anyway, and would probably need to be replaced. And you get the added benefit of energy savings, but they're just so old, they're gonna need to be replaced regardless, right? But so it's kind of a mix. I mean, some stuff like lighting real fast, other stuff are big systems that just will be more efficient as you replace them, right?
Yeah, a lot of the major HVAC, the handling and the boilers and whatnot have been budgeted in the 8-year capital plan. So, I mean, that should be taken care of at some point. The quick payback ones involve LED lighting. And that's where we would like to approach the Joint Advisory Committee to fund those things that have almost less than a 5-year payback.
Right.
And that committee is meeting tomorrow morning for the first time to select their 5th member.
So the Inca campus doesn't have the kind of professional assessments completed yet for it, but that's part of what you're also going to be asking for is to carry out similar assessments for the Inca facilities as well, right?
And a master plan for programmatic reasons.
Yeah. So understanding the plans are still to be done. Could you just, one thing I'd just be curious to kind of hear some high-level thoughts from you about is just on the Inca campus. I mean, I know that there's been kind of different ideas over time about, let's monetize the real estate to invest in other areas that are needed. And then, obviously a lot of people would like to keep the presence over there. So my understanding is that the current position of the college is to keep at least parts of the Inca campus. The other building, one building is on the market. But what's the in the facilities that you have now? There's still a lot of space that's not utilized at all, right? What percent?
40%.
40%. Okay. At a high level, what is the college's thinking around the future utilization of that space? Is it to kind of build it out, or kind of keep it undeveloped and save the money on that for other things, or what's the high level vision?
Because of bus transportation, many of my students rely on bus transportation. Because of that, what we try to do is put programs out there that are self-contained. They don't have to move from building to building. An example is the brewing program. 90% of the brewing classes are right there in that building. The other 10% are general education classes that the student has got to come over to the AV Tech campus or take online. So when we look at applied science programs, workforce development programs, programs that lead to jobs, that would be a place where we would put them. The biggest thing that we're deficient in right now is as that brewing program grew and became more and more popular, I don't know what's wrong with my voice, I apologize. Maybe I need some water. Anyway, as that brewing program grew, we took away from the small business incubator all of their warehouse space. Same amount of space, the brewing program got bigger and bigger, and the small business incubator, the small business training spaces got smaller and smaller. So one of the first things we need to do is give them that warehouse space so that they can bring in somebody who builds something as opposed to somebody who just needs a desk. So that would, short term, what we would want to do is give them some good warehouse space in the 40% that's unutilized.
And what percentage, like roughly, do you think that would utilize? I mean, there's still a lot of additional space
Yeah.
that's still kind of to be determined.
And some of it's on the second floor, some of it is, BASF, had a 3-story piece of equipment. God, I can't even tell you what it did, but I think it made thread or something like that. It's, I'm sorry?
It might thread.
Okay, it's stuck in the middle of the building, and we got to get that thing out of there. And it's hard to tell you in the end how much of the 40% is unutilized. I'm sorry, not unutilized, but prepared that we could prepare to use.
That's why the master plan is so important, because we have a master plan for our main campus, but we don't have one for Intel.
But it goes back to this again. We're talking about adding more to an area. Right now, we don't need any buildings.
No.
This school is only half full. Our main campus is half full of students, 50%. So, we're talking about the wrong things right now. Let's get it to where you can make stuff work. Then these plans that we're talking, everybody wants a 10, 20, or 50-year plan. The main thing is, let's get what we're going to do tonight to try to get you $300,000 out of the way and try to make this work. Right now, we're pulling energy down by what they're doing as far as the money that's going into this next 8-year deal. But,
I don't think that you're hearing from the college any talk right now about building a new building.
I understand
That's
that.
basically been stopped quite a while ago,
Yeah.
quite a few years back. I appreciate what this board is doing with the quarter-cent sales tax money, which is the significant repairs and replacements on the buildings. You're talking about $25 million over a period of 8 years. That is a significant amount of money, more so than we would need to build a building that are going into long-term repairs. So
Exactly.
you and I are talking about the same thing here.
Exactly, but the main thing is, we need to wait and see what's happening. We as a group up here right now, it all could change in the next election, it can change at any time, as far as this group. But the main thing I want to do is get you to do tonight, get you where your feet's on the ground. Are they solid? Probably not totally, but at least they'll be closer to solid. And then we'll talk about the energy side of the thing at a different day.
So I don't disagree with Commissioner Breyer's comments at all. It's just revealing to me, some great information on, particularly, on the EV campus and energy. And I wish a lot of other people were here in this conversation, actually. But I don't, when it comes to the EV campus and that additional utilization of space, I don't think it requires a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever. I just think it requires some action. It can be very simple. If you're removing that piece of equipment, if you're expanding warehouse, opportunity in there, and you just that's a goal, and you want to do that, you want to hit that out, and other people are going to utilize that space, that additional space, and not, but I think it requires some sort of commitment, not necessarily how plans are. They're a living document, they change, and sometimes it takes forever to execute, but if you can, there's so much potential space there. It's really good to hear something come back quickly.
I don't think, Ms. Pinder, maybe you can stop me if I go too far, but there is a company interested in AV Tech, I beg your pardon, interested in Buncombe County, still in my water. There could be transformation, and that's a big word that I'm going to live with, transformation. We would like to have space for them because I need to train them, just like we trained for GE engineering. I need to train them. The best way to do that is to have space for them. So, and yes, I think that our planning for the future to a degree depends on the interest in that property out there. We've got a gold mine, and we had one person who came a hair away from buying a large portion of it from us, who said it's the best property west of I-26 in this state. Well, gee, we know what we've got out there, and we want to utilize it properly.
Well, you've got Hawk-On out there now, you've got 100 additional jobs out there. There's going to be more jobs in Buncombe County. I'm just saying that we need to see something, some sort of definitive plan, short term and long term for the events. And all that's going to do is attract business. If you've got that plan in place, you've got a brochure associated with that plan that we can give to potential manufacturers or whoever, people that are in the big office complex. It's just shocking to me that that hasn't happened out there. It will, but it's good to see you guys. Glad we were able to have this have the conversation.
I wish I had still my water.
Other questions, comments from commissioners? All right, well, we'll talk about all this again tonight.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys for being here, appreciate it, and we'll see you this evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, all right. All right, next up is Tim Love. We'll talk about strategic planning.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
This Peter Schwartz out, I'm out of Glen.
As Tim is getting that up, you're not going to tag team on this presentation this afternoon. I will let him get started and then I will jump in at certain points.
Good deal. So what we wanted to do today was take a few minutes to recap on the strategic planning workshops that y'all participated in last month. From there, we also want to talk about next steps. So what are the specific things that we're doing? What's the schedule look like? How are we going to engage employees, the rest of the public? And definitely looking for feedback from them. So in terms of the recap, y'all participated in sessions with Rebecca Ryan, where you did what she was calling the big sort. So you got into two groups and you evaluated specific trends and determined those which you thought were the most high impact and those that were most high certainty. This is kind of a snapshot of those results. And to walk through this, so on this left side here, you have the acronym CFQ. So that's commissioner frequency. Y'all were in two tables, so where commissioner frequency is 2, that means both commissioner tables were unanimous in the trends that they thought were highest impact and highest certainty. Down here at the bottom where you see a 1, that means 1 out of the 2 tables sort of coalesced around a trend, but both did not. That doesn't mean that you didn't spend time thinking through that trend, you just didn't put it in that top quadrant. On the far right here, we have SFQ, that's staff frequency. So the department heads met and participated in the same exercise that y'all did. They were split into 6 tables. And so where you see a 6, that's where all 6 department head tables rank the trend as high certainty, high impact. Clearly, as we go down, there's color coding to guide us, but the lowest response would be 1 for this particular instance. What we wanted to do is show y'all kind of where you landed first off, but also show you where there's some alignment with staff as well. So, as an example, the growing jail population. Both commissioner tables rank this as high certainty, high impact, and it was unanimous amongst the staff as well. This is something clearly that we need to consider as we move forward. Another big one where there was a lot of overlap was growing housing costs and supply. So something that we've sort of seen a lot in the newspapers, but sort of felt on our own as well. An area I would draw your attention to, which is growing cybersecurity threats. So one commissioner table ranked this as of high, certainly high impact, but was unanimous among staff. And I think this is interesting just to kind of show us that, from our places where we sit, we see the world slightly differently. No one's wrong, no one's right. I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's top of mind for us because, we see it in local governments that are sort of ransomed. We think of it as sort of high certainty, high impact. But just wanted to give you kind of a quick snapshot of some of the areas of overlap, but also some of the areas where there weren't overlap. Are there any quick thoughts on that? Any responses?
Still got more to go.
We do.
28, coming back, so, no.
That's right.
That's why I'm looking to see what they bring back to us.
That's great. So you also participated in workshops with Donna Warner from the UNC School of Government. The focus there was on values, and the takeaways here, the values that were most critical to the board, and then the values that the board hoped to be known for. Again, you were split into groups and sort of talked amongst yourselves. The values that you deemed to be most critical when we evaluated across all tables were value of respect, value of honesty and integrity, and the value of embracing a culture of collaboration. In terms of values that you aspire to be known for, these are direct quotes, but the first is that you would like to be known as restoring public trust through honest and ethical decision-making, transparency, fiscal responsibility, impactful policy-making, and good governance. A more succinct version of something to be known for was that simply we fixed it, meaning sort of correcting some of the issues of the past. So those are quick recaps. What we've done since then is we've had a few internal conversations with Rebecca Ryan and her team, as well as Donna Warner, and they provided back to us a very draft sort of summation of, how do these trends, how do these values come together in sort of a single document, a single sort of framework that you could look at. Again, this is draft. It's not meant to be something final. You'll get an opportunity for feedback, and we'll walk through that feedback process here in a second. But I wanted to turn it over to Avril at this point.
Thanks, Dan. And to Commissioner Pryor, who just stood up for me, you asked, what are they going to come back with? And these were the focus areas that Rebecca put together for us to consider. The focus area of educated and capable community. In that, she created a vision for us to look at. And this is what she wants to get input from you guys when you talked about coming back on the 26th and the 28th of August next week. Is that vision these are her words, so is that reflective of what you will want to see around an educated and capable community? The primary trends in that area, but trends that Tim just laid out to you, was a growing racial gap in the educational achievement, affordable quality childcare options falling short, and growing population. So those bucketed values and the trends that we saw would fit in that pillar or that focus area. So when you talk to Rebecca on the 26th and the 20th, and I know some of you have not yet gotten your dates scheduled with her, but she'll be going through those visions and making sure that she's being reflective of what you would want to see those visions to say and what those focus areas are. The other focus area would be environmental stewardship, and that vision will be a high quality air, water, farmland, and renewable energy for future generations. Those are, again, you can wordsmith this, these are her words that she's put together, but you get to work with her in the next 2 sessions to give her feedback. The primary trends there were around loss of farmland, growing housing costs and supply, and growing population. The additional trends are where you were 1 table or less on staff numbers, but those additional trends was 1 table versus 2. The vibrant economy was the 3rd focus area, and a robust and sustainable economy that builds on homegrown industries, talents, and provides economic mobility for all. And the last focus group will be safe, healthy, and engaged residents. So those were the 4 big buckets, I call them, that she would put our goals in as we move forward. So the vision would be something that you guys would define of what we want to see, what our end future state would look like as you define that. So when you talk to her next week, that's where she will focus on. Are those the right visions? Is that where we want to head as a community? And then we can start to build out the goals that come from that. Notice on the bottom of that chart, there's our resources, our people, and our organizational infrastructure. For us to accomplish the 4 focus areas, we need that foundation in place, and that foundation will be around our people, our resources, which is financial, and our buildings and our organizational infrastructure. So that vision, as she's laying out there, is how we would look as a community internally to the county, and then the external ones will be the ones on top, the education community, environmental stewardship, vibrant economy, and safe and healthy engaged residents. I see some head nods, and I also see some looks. So are there any questions around what it is she's laid out so far?
I'd just say you can't go by the looks. I've got grandkids, you know, your mind goes there sometimes. So
All right.
I think it's good. I like buckets. I like buckets are, you know, used everywhere. Your visual. There was one thing that I read that county will become a best place to work, able to attract and retain the best, brightest public professionals. I would just switch the word attract and retain. Because your first obligation would be to retain the people that we have and attract. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I feel that's right.
Any other comments?
The only thing I've seen on there that I think we need to change is, said we fixed it. I don't think we fixed it yet. I think we're working toward making it better.
And you could say we're fixing it.
We're fixing it, but it says we fixed it.
So that value, Commissioner, if you'll flip back to that, was what do we want to be known for? So when you look back, what have we done? We have fixed it. So that will be a future state. What have we done? So what do we want to be known for?
It's not done, it's not fixed.
I still believe in fixing.
Okay.
That's just me.
That's too much.
What lifespan would county staff envision this strategic plan having?
5 years.
5 years, okay.
So our goal, and if you want to fast forward, go to the commissioner feedback quickly. Again, these are the 2 dates that if you guys haven't signed up, these are the dates that she has available that we can sign up. And these are some of the questions that she'll be discussing with you. Do the focus areas fairly reflect what we discussed? Are the vision statements what we want to see? What is missing? This was a 2-day kind of intensive workshop. So have you thought about it more? What is missing? What focus areas do we need to include that's not included? And what are we utilizing as best practices? When you start looking at it, this is going to be an ambitious plan for us to do, but how do we start seeing what is it that we want to be known for in the future state? The next slide then, we'll talk a little bit about the next steps, and I'll go to you for the schedule. This is when you're asking about when would we go live. So walk through the schedule, and I can talk about, we want to have this live for July of 2020, and it'll be a 2025 plan.
That's right. So our next big event, so phone calls with Rebecca next week, followed by a workshop on September 17th. We're working through a couple time slots with you. That would be commissioners and department heads together to sort of provide additional comment on the plan. We're looking at public input and employee input processes, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in a second, but a completed plan in December. The reason that's important is we want to be able to kick off the next budget cycle with this sort of strategic plan providing the guide rails for us. But in addition, we recognize this is kind of an ongoing thing, so that plan's going to need to get filled out, specific action steps that are going to need to occur. That'll occur over time. But the launch being July 2020, to ours one.
So I have one comment, and I made this comment at the end of the planning sessions we had as well, but I thought it was, a good process in many ways, a lot of interesting data and all the trends. But, in some ways, the way the meetings were structured, like whether you believe that the trends that were written down on all the pieces of paper are the most important trends or the right trends, kind of drove the process, right? Because we didn't come up with the trends, they were sort of given to us, and then we sort of, kind of ranked them and provided feedback on them. But, there are a couple of things that, I think would have been interesting, and we only have so much time, so you can't do everything, right? But my hunch would be that if the commission were asked, well, what do you think are the important trends happening, there would probably have been some different things in there. I think that it sounded like the way those trends were developed was through the Chamber of Commerce is doing a process, and they've had some community, kind of sessions to do that, and that's great. I'm glad they're doing that. But that does kind of represent a particular perspective in the community, right? Like primarily the business centers in the community. Anyways, that's kind of like the only kind of high level kind of critique I would have of just kind of how the process worked.
So Brownie, that's one of the reasons why question number 2 was what's missing.
Yes.
So if there are trends that are missing from what we got from the community input meetings that the chamber led.
Yeah.
And we also did some national trends, and we also got trends from what we see day to day in our operations. So if there are trends missing at the board field, when we talk to Rebecca next week on the 26th and 28th, that's the central question that she's going to be asking. What else did you know or see that we didn't include? And then we can actually vet those and get those into the buckets before we start talking to the public and to the employees about how to fill those sessions out. So one of our goals will be to find out from you guys next week what's missing. What focus areas and what trends are you seeing that is not yet included or addressed in the focus that she sent back? So if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up so we can get that input.
Well, I agree with, what this commission has to say, but I agree with what the staff has to say because they have to run the show. And basically there's 1,500 employees here and they talk to their bosses, which is not me. And so I look at it in a different, I look at it in a different form. We need to listen to them as much as we need to listen to anybody else. We're just 7 of us. That's a long way, there's almost 70 of them. And that's, I don't think we can build it as quick as everybody wants to try to build something. I'm probably wrong, but that's my thoughts. But, there's areas that probably was left out, there's areas that probably would need to be in, but it's not a, I look at it as respect of what the people think. And we have staff that have an understanding of what they think the people are needing at the time. So I want to listen to them as much as I do anybody else.
All right, any other comments? All right, Tim, thanks so much.
I have a couple of items. Sorry to get into this, but so we walked briefly through the schedule. Just wanted to plant the seed with y'all. We don't have to focus on it today, but once the commission gives us kind of here are the focus areas, the priorities as an organization, we would then work internally with staff and departments around those focus areas to develop the action steps. What are the next things to do in those areas? We also want to make sure that we're speaking to the public on this and in discussions with the county manager. The thought process there is to use our existing boards and commissions and sort of get their input on these focus areas and really focus on, what does success look like? Not change my focus areas. Within these focus areas, how do we know that we'll be successful with a population of folks that's already dialed in and interested because they're participating on a local commission? And then finally, we want to make sure that we're then getting back to employees, to Commissioner Fryer's point, the 1,500 folks that have to make this happen. to help them discuss, how do we accomplish the plan? Now we know what the goals are, we know what success looks like to the public, how do we actually make this happen? So that's kind of a plan moving forward. Would welcome any feedback at any point, this is clearly not the end. And then we'll transition to a next step slide. Again, reminding you, the commissioner interviews are on the 26th and the 28th. We are looking to determine when we're going to do the workshop with y'all. Right now, we definitely want to do it on the 17th, excuse me, which is a Tuesday, it's a board meeting day. So my question to y'all, maybe to respond either now or back to Lamar, would be, do you want to do it in the morning, or do you want to replace pre-meeting in the afternoon? So something to think about. I've vetted that with this parent. Y'all can think on it, or you can respond.
It depends on how long you think it's gonna take. I mean, if you do it in the morning and, if we want to extend it, then we can extend it. Do it in the afternoon, you might feel rushed, but I don't know how long it's gonna take.
Minimum 3 hours.
Do it in the morning. It's just me.
Let's do it in the morning. Because we need the pre-meeting anyway, and our regular meeting. And I'm fresh in the morning, let's do it.
I ain't stressed about it.
I'm fine with doing it in the morning. If we do, then we're probably going to want to keep the pre-meeting to just like a very basic review of what's on the agenda and not cover other substantive stuff. So otherwise, we're just going to meetings all day long.
Well, why don't we just drop the pre-meeting and add it into
I'd be fine with. We could just do a brief review of the agenda and then go into the follow-up on the strategic planning stuff.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
good.
probably fine.
That's fine.
Good idea.
Great. Well, we'll book your calendars with an AM session on 9/6.
Sounds good.
Thank you all.
All right, guys. Thank you. All right, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. I've just got a brief couple items to talk to you about this afternoon. So monthly reporting and gap billing, those are my two items, so we'll jump right into monthly reporting. Beginning with this current year, you'll see new reporting from me monthly. It's going to be a little deeper than what you're used to seeing. You're used to seeing the release report. To go into detail about collections. You have the July report in your packet, and I'd like to walk through a couple details with you on that if I may. So don't be alarmed at the levy for July. Bills were created in August. His team worked very diligently to make sure the values were accurate and bills were created. So what you see before you is collections simply for the month of July, where our focus is still on the previous year. So you see the first table is going to be current year, and that's going to grow as we move through the year. Because you'll see the levy that was billed in August, you'll see that for next month. And then there'll be a subsequent billing in early fall that's going to be for public service and catching up on some personal property. So you'll see an additional increase in the fall. The second table represents what we've collected in July for prior tax years. So there's still an effort to collect on prior years. So you'll notice those two tables. Are there any questions so far on those? The next item that I want to bring your attention to is there's a total represented for the property tax that's been released in the month of July. You're used to seeing the release amounts on a detailed report. We're going to keep those reports within the collections office. They'll be available at any time, but we're giving a summary total for those on this monthly report. There's also a line for refunds processed. So the refunds can be as a result of a reduction to taxable value or overpayments. This is pretty frequent. Someone will send in more than they owe, or that one spouse may send a check and the second spouse will send another one, so we refund that second payment. Additionally included in that refund amount are registered motor vehicle prorations. If someone sells their vehicle, they've already paid the tax for the year, then we prorate that tax. Are there any questions on the monthly reporting? July will actually be on your regular meeting for September 3rd. But I wanted to give an opportunity to talk through it before.
And Commissioners, moving forward after this, it will be on your consent agenda. It's just a standard report that you'll see.
So the next topic is gap billing. This one has been discussed for quite a while. So I wanted to take this opportunity to actually talk through it with you. Gap billing of property taxes occurs when there are one or more months, the gap, in billed property taxes between the expiration of a vehicle's registration and the renewal of that registration or the issuance of a new registration. So during that gap, that vehicle is unregistered and no taxes have been billed or collected for that gap. So a gap property notice is a property tax bill covering the months between the expiration of the vehicle's registration and the renewal of that registration or the issuance of a new registration. We have not been assessing or billing for that gap, so we're starting that process. So with this new process, I start to think, what do we need to be aware of? This new process will be confusing to taxpayers, and I'd like to explain why. Because when the state, the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles, began billing and collecting for registered motor vehicle property taxes, they took all of it. So now that we're going back to say, now you need to pay the county for this portion, for the gap portion, when taxpayers have been used to working with the Department of Motor Vehicles for their registered motor vehicle tax, they're going to create a little bit of confusion.
We need to drop the state, we just need to do it ourselves. And they're little. You
And
don't need, the taxpayers don't need to be double billed, period, I'm thinking.
And it's not a double bill. They haven't been billed because this is a period of time that's not registered. So that's what the county will be billing for, because if it's not registered, it's treated as personal property. So if, for example, if I have a vehicle that I don't drive for 6 months and I turn in the plate, but then at the end of that 6 months, I re-register, that 6 months hasn't been taxed in any way. It wasn't taxed as registered and it wasn't taxed as personal property. So that's what we're going to be billing. Does that help?
And the state has told us that we need to do that. They would not pick that up. When you go and get registered at the state to get your new tag, the state is not picking up that gap. They have passed that task on to the government.
I mean, there's people take tags off the car, put them in the garage and sell it to somebody else. So they're gonna get gapped in that too. If they're gonna have to pay tax on something that they just put in the garage for sale.
It becomes personal property at that point in time, and the state says that, yes, that's our job to go to.
We're digging ourselves a deep hole for this county. That's all I can say.
So also,
Digging every dime we can get out of it.
the average Buncombe revenue for these bills is very low. Compared to a regular property tax bill that averages around $1,375, these will be very low, which limits the collection remedies that we have available. We do not have a tag block available on these because they weren't registered at the time, so we can't block the tag, which was a remedy that was used historically for registered motor vehicle property tax. The gap notices to taxpayers will be beginning in the next few weeks, so this is coming pretty quickly. Are there any other questions I may be able to answer?
But what we're talking about here, this is not gonna be a big deal, is it?
It's monetarily, it's not a significant amount, and the county peers that I've talked with, their collection rate is very low on these.
Right.
The compliance rate for collection or the efforts to collect?
The compliance rate.
So when counties seek to collect the fees, they don't have a very high percentage of success with that?
No,
People just ignore it?
yes.
Okay. And you're basically just saying, so the expectation is that would be the dynamic here as well?
I would hope not, but I fear that we would follow the same line with our other county peers.
Okay.
The trigger for us initiating this is it's state mandate.
State mandate.
Is it a new change in statute or regulation or something that kicked it to the county?
Is it actually mandated, or is it just that if someone's going to do it, it's the county that would do it?
And I think it falls back to the county tax collector's oath. I mean, it's in the law, so it has to attempt to comply. What's always confusing is that the Machinery Act for taxes, you have real property, you have personal property, then you have an entirely different beast, which is motor vehicle taxes. That's what the state collects. And when they don't renew, they throw in the tag, it becomes personal property, and a lot of those are worth under $500, some old beater. There's not a whole lot you can do to force collect it, and squeeze it really isn't worth its use a lot of times, but they're obligated to send out the bill.
I mean, you're just gonna collect what you can, that's just the way it is.
Are you going to pursue, like if someone does, if we know someone's got this, they don't pay, is there a process, or are you planning on pursuing it, or are we just gonna help you do it?
We would follow the same method of collection that we have available for other property bills, personal property bills.
And what's that look like?
So that would be levy and sale, bank garnishment, payroll garnishment.
So if you use those tools, I would think compliance rate would be very high, because those are pretty powerful tools, right?
They are powerful, and one thing that I also consider when we get into those methods, we attach fees to the bills. So a $35 bill could wind up being a $95 bill.
Are other counties following similar collection strategies,
Yes.
that they're still not having much success?
Now,
Why not?
their success rate ranges from 30% to 65 or 70%.
Even if they're using those same tools?
Sometimes it's difficult to find these taxpayers because this is an unregistered vehicle.
Now, we collect taxes on other personal property as
We do.
well, right? So, and in general, I would assume that our, collection rate is a lot higher percentage for other personal property
Mhm.
taxation, maybe not as high as real property, but a lot higher than those percentages, is that right?
Yes.
Other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
all right. East Asheville Library. This lease rate is outrageous.
Yeah, I was incensed when I saw that.
What about 50 cents? Let's start there. $900 even.
Good afternoon. I'm here to talk about the East Asheville Library long-term lease. The City Council of Asheville approved the lease that I'm going to talk about today. I'm just going to go over the highlights. As you can see there, the lease fee is $1 per year, and the term of the lease is for 99 years. In exchange for that, the county is responsible for a number of elements, one being the demolition of the existing buildings, excluding the fire station, which will remain on the property, the construction of the new library course, the renovation of the existing basketball court, and also the replacement of the existing playground. Also, we will be enhancing the pedestrian crossing at Tunnel Road, and will also be responsible for all repairs and maintenance in the care of the leased premises. And to give you, oops,
Question on the pedestrian crossing.
yeah,
So, would we get any funds from NCDOT for that? I mean, is there not? And why would we need to do that?
treacherous.
Okay, let me.
Yeah, sorry.
Why would we need to pay for it?
Why would we need to be the ones? I suppose that, you know, like,
It would only be for the lease agreement that the city's said, taking over the property for $1 per year. So that would agree.
So commissioners, we can approach DOT and ask for any funding, but as part of our lease agreement, we're responsible to making sure that there's that pedestrian. So how we fund it is not part of that deal, so we would reach out with Nate and planning and help us to navigate whether or not NCDOT would put the crosswalk in and would stripe the crosswalk and put the button you push so you can cross.
Okay, I think they will do that. We had Ransom Brown who was part of it too. We had some success out
Yes.
in Candler having them do that.
So we would approach them when we get to that part of the funding conversation. But right now, we're telling you that that's something that the city has put on us to make sure that there is a crosswalk and there's proper access across the tunnel road. So that's just part of the lease agreement right now. We have agreed that that's something that we need for safety for our patrons. But we will look at funding opportunities with NCDOT to cross that highway.
Yeah, and I would say that you should be very aggressive in that.
Yes.
Because they
Tend to pay for
probably
that.
do some of it. They may not cover all of it, but you should have a high success rate.
give you a reminder about the property there, for those who may not be familiar with where we're going. The leased area will be what's highlighted in red there. Currently, you can see there's the two existing buildings which fall within that, which are the library and also the community center. The fire station, which is there closer to Tunnel Road, that will remain, as I mentioned. Towards the back of the property, you can see where the existing park is and the basketball courts, and basically the library will shift back towards the rear of the property. The current square footage is 2,700 square feet, and the new building will be 15,000 square feet.
All right.
And then the project timeline, just to give you a quick overview of what's coming. The construction documents right now are 95% complete, and by the first week of September, they'll be 100% complete. September 12th, the bids will be issued, and they'll be due back in mid-October. That's when we'll get our final cost estimate. And then the construction is anticipated to be 10 to 12 months, which will run from October, end of October, October 2020.
All right, thank you for your update.
Thank you.
Sounds positive. All right, Mr. Pruitt, technical corrections for contracts.
Yeah, let me just try to do this verbally, because every time I try to write it down, it gets kind of weedy, but it's really not that complicated. What we have is this board passed the procurement manual in November of 2018. That procurement manual is made up of several documents: the policy, contracts policy, procurement cards, meals, meetings, gift cards, travel, and surplus. So the procurement policy clearly and unequivocally delegates from this board to the county manager or her designee the authority for entering into the contracts and agreements for supplies, service agreements, HVAC, all that sort of stuff, everything that the board approves through the budget cycle. In the next section, the contracts policy, there's a discrepancy which seems to hinder, and I might just, it's my fault for being a little bit more anal in this respect than need be, but it says that the county manager can do this, delegate via the budget ordinance, but we don't do that. So we would just suppose as a technical correction for this board to take up at the next agenda to modify the contract policy to say, as set forth, the county manager has that authority as set forth in the procurement policy, and just strike that language, and that should fix it all. It in no way changes the board's authority, which you cannot delegate or which you have retained. Things like your legislative duties, formal contracts for over $500,000 have to come to the board. Many Brooks Acts materials of certain amounts over $90,000 have to come to the board. Real estate, economic development has to go to the board. You can't delegate it even if you wanted to. So we're just asking for that technical correction.
Now, there were certain, when we talked about this some months ago, there were Oh, well, here's a question. Is this the same as changing, like on the item we have tonight with the SCS engineers, contract approvals? Is that related to what you're talking about right now? Because that would be a separate change if we change the thresholds that require county commission approval for certain funding amounts, right? So this doesn't really have anything to do with funding, it's just the literal execution of the contract.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you do your heavy lifting-driven budget cycle. I mean, what you're talking about is in the procurement policy as well, but that's a different piece.
It's a different part of it, okay.
Yes.
So I was saying, the way Frew explained it to me, in the budget ordinance in the past, we would put that you're authorizing the county manager to do these things. We wiped all that language out of the budget ordinance, but this was a remnant of that, and we did not clean up this policy at that time.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next up, we have a gentleman with us who wants to make a brief presentation to the commission. And so his name is Elias. I'm sorry I didn't write down your last name, but Elias, I'll ask you to come up and tell us about what you wanted to talk about and present.
I just graduated from Asheville High.
Speak out into the mic so we can hear.
I just graduated from Asheville High. I was a student at SILSA, and I was also dual enrolled in AV Tech, and I also grew up playing at the East Asheville Library Playground, so it's kind of relevant things. So I painted this portrait of Commissioner Whitesides.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
This was part of my Art 4 honors concentration for my final project. I wanted to...
Hold it up.
That's amazing. Wow.
That's the second one. I have one from a student from Asheville High who graduated from Yale recently. She did it when I rotated off the board. So I'll add that to my collection. Mama, thank you.
That's
Appreciate it.
That one has an aura around it.
Yeah.
I hate to see how my grandboys would describe it.
That's an amazing piece.
Yeah.
Where are you, what's next for you?
Well, yeah, where do you go from here?
I'm moving to South Korea in
wow.
September. I got a scholarship with the United States State Department. It's the National Security Language Initiative Scholarship. So I'll be acting as a youth cultural ambassador and studying Korean over there for 9 months. And then George Washington University in Washington, D.C.
Great.
Elias received his Eagle Scout Award, and we recognized
Right,
him
we
months
did.
ago.
That's right. We were the Eagle Scout
Yeah.
Awards. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
All right, thank you so much.
Now I have to get a frame. That's good. Thank you, fella. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Do you mind if I got a picture?
Yeah.
They take a picture of us with.
Do you have your phone or you want me to? Yeah, of course.
Here goes the.
Oh, we got a pro, but I'll do it in
Yeah,
the
same
formal too.
difference.
Okay.
There's very few people who do faces.
Amazing.
Very
Thanks, great to see you.
Thank you. What's the It's because I want to Risky station over there. Sure. Say we're going to go back. So how long will you be there?
We'll be there for 9 months. So.
All right, thank you again, Elias. Great job, really talented. Okay,
We should rotate that between our offices. So we can all pay respects to you.
I just want to throw that.
That's beautiful painting.
Yeah, it is. He's talented.
so Commissioners, last item is the public comment, and I sent an email this morning outlining some thoughts and give you a hard copy of those. So let me just kind of summarize, I think the highlights of this. And we've kind of gone back and forth with this. You know, we have had our comment at the beginning of meetings. We have moved it to the back of meetings. You know, there's pros and cons of all of this, right? Some people don't get there right at the beginning. Some people don't want to wait all the way until the very end of our sometimes long meeting for comments. There's no right way to do it. There's some pros and cons. Here's my suggestion. Because I think one of the problems with the way we're doing it right now is that we approve our consent agenda before we take any public comment, right? So if someone actually wants to talk to us about what's on the consent agenda, and usually the consent agenda is a bunch of fairly routine things, that's what's on the consent agenda. But sometimes there's things on there that people don't necessarily agree are just consensus kind of things. People might, you know, have questions or concerns. So I think it's not good for us to vote on approving the whole consent agenda without public comment. So my suggestion is we move the public comment to prior to the consent agenda. So, you know, we'll come in, welcome, pledge of allegiance, you know, but we'll go ahead and take public comment before the consent agenda. So that's one change. The other thing is that, you know, for every public hearing that we schedule, we are required to take public comment on all public hearings. So all public hearings will have public comment. But my suggestion is that basically, moving the public comment to the beginning of the session, we would ask people to comment on any items, except for items that have public hearings. We'd ask them to go ahead and comment on any items on the agenda at that meeting, but not take separate comment on non-public hearing items during the meeting. The one other kind of change, which staff suggested, was that we also have a sign-in sheet, because sometimes I think people don't always clearly articulate their name, and it's hard for staff to capture that in the minutes. So having a sign-in sheet would help, just that we record correctly who is there. So we have a sign-in sheet, we would take people in the order that they sign in, but then once we've gone through the list, we would also just ask, you know, is there anybody else who wants to comment, just so we make sure we capture, we give everyone a chance who wants to talk to us. So anyway, that's a summary of the ideas. So wanted to just kind of sort of socialize it here and hear any thoughts. And, you know, if we are going to consider this, we'll obviously talk about it again when we do that.
So this has been moving, moved this several times. Didn't it start at the front?
Yes, it started at the front, but not before the consent agenda. I don't think we've ever done it so that we actually allow people to comment on the
It wasn't before the consent agenda.
No, we've always approved the consent agenda, and then we took public comment. So we've never done it such that people can weigh in on the consent agenda.
So did somebody mention this to you? Is this just?
No, I mean, I've just been kind of thinking about it, and kind of,
Yeah.
basically, yeah, just kind of, and I mean, honestly, I have sometimes just in the meetings, I kind of have become aware, like, we're voting on the consent agenda, and nobody in this room has been able to ask a question or comment on it. I don't think there's been any time where someone has complained about that, which honestly is kind of a sort of a. Did somebody raise a concern?
Yeah, one.
I can't remember
Yeah.
one, but anyway, I've just sort of been aware of it, that we do it that way, and kind of didn't feel right to me.
So what's the downside other than, what is the downside?
I think the downside of doing it at the very beginning is that if there are some items that there's a lot of public interest in, so if the room's, you know, full of people who want to comment on some item, or maybe even a couple of items, maybe the room's really full, maybe it's one of those nights where we're dealing with some stuff that there's a lot of public interest in, then you need to go through that whole public input process before you get to some other items on the agenda, which may, even, for example, the consent agenda, that may be relatively routine, and so the folks who are there for those, and the staff who are there for those kind of routine items, they're going to have to wait for us to get through the public comment stuff before we take up those items, and then, you know, most of them will probably leave after that. But the flip side of that's also true. If there's people who want to come for public comment, most of the time people have to arrive, you know, they arrive early in the meeting because they never know how long our meetings are going to go, so they have to sit through all that other stuff to wait till the end. So I think it's no net disadvantage, but it's just someone's either waiting till the end, or people are waiting more at the beginning to get to the other stuff. I think it's all kind of a wash, honestly. Any other just kind of initial thoughts? Again, we'll talk about this again. Think about it.
So can I ask, I'm going to ask the guys who've been coming to more of these meetings than anybody in this room, and I'm going to ask you to keep it short for me, Jerry. What's your take on this? Because you've seen it both ways. You've seen it the beginning, the end. I do like what Chairman said about, technically we're bypassing the consent agenda. But I mean, I've seen it both ways, the beginning, the end, and heard all kinds, but anyhow, what's your just brief comment, Jerry?
We've already had this at the beginning before.
Yeah.
When David Gann was here. And we was able to ask questions about the consent agenda, in public. Me and Don's done it many times. So it's not something that hasn't been done. And that was at the front of the meeting. That was not a public comment. It was just asking a question about the agenda. So, if we had any questions, I take the public comment, at the end of the meeting, it's fine. Or at the beginning, either one.
So you don't have strong feelings either way?
Either way.
Okay.
All right, well, let's, everyone just think about it. If you have any other thoughts on it, feel free to share between now and when we consider it.
One thing that would be helpful, maybe as part of the sign-in sheet or maybe publicly posted somewhere, is just the guidelines around public comment. I get a lot of questions from folks, even folks who come on a regular basis, like, is it 3 minutes? What's the process through which, I think it's 8 people can cede their time. So maybe if we just had a really accessible, clear presentation of that information, that would be helpful.
I know what you did. You could, we've got screens all over the place. You could just pop up at the front, just pop a slide up, that says what public comment is, state your name and where you're from, and you got, 3 minutes, the yellow light comes on. You don't have to, you just pop it up there. Or you can tell everybody.
All right. Well, thanks.
I mean, I kind of like to see it at the first. I voted for it to go to them. But now after seeing it, I like it at first. But one thing to kind of move things along a little bit quicker is take the front 2 rows or the front row over next to the podium, and whenever they're coming in, if you're going to have public comment, come up there and sit. And I know Jerry can't do that because he's filming, but you said anyone that hadn't signed in can still come at the end. And, sometimes, hey, look out on the takes Jerry and Don walk up there sometimes, And you're always asking who's next. If you see there's 6 more.
We can, with the sign-in sheet, we can go ahead and say, here's gonna be the order of speakers, and we can ask people to come to the front.
Yeah.
So they'll know where they're going, so I think it will move along a little faster.
Didn't we do that, let's see, didn't we do that at Valley Street? I remember signing in somewhere. I remember when I was coming and speaking for housing, I signed in somewhere. I don't remember where it was, I don't remember if it was here.
And also, Brownie, I know that this is a tough decision for you when to hit it, but I think it's got to be made clear.
Yeah.
When that red light, I don't want to be rude, the commission don't want to be rude, it's over.
Yeah. I think the point's about, let's try to have some of this stuff written down, so where people are signing in, they can see it, and maybe on the screens too, just reinforce it, and with some good language in there saying, when the lights are red, your time is up, and you need to stop in. We want to make sure everyone has the same amount of time. Brownie will gather you down. Don't make us go there. Yeah, just because it isn't fair to give some people more time.
Right.
I mean, I like, the writing it down, the putting it on the screen, the adding, you're actually adding, to the decorum of the process, that it's important, we're not just winging it, this is public comment, this is your time, here's the structure, stay within it to be fair, and any visuals that you do is just going to add credibility to it.
All right, very good. Well, hey, thanks for the good discussion. All right, anything else? This is everything that we put on the agenda. Nothing else? I think we're adjourned. We are going to have a closed session after the regular meeting, and Michael outlined the 2 topics: it's economic development and lawsuits.
Excuse me, Chairman. Can I mention something? Well, sure. I sent out an email right before this meeting. I had a request from Cooperative Extension they're sending a student from 4-H to the North Carolina Association for County Commissioners, and they want to try to get a picture with the board in the chambers right around 4:30. That's a possibility.
That sounds good. I've got a call at 4 o'clock. I'm not sure if I'm going to get there by 4:30, but everyone go, and I'll get there at the end.
I'll try to gather you around because they're supposed to be here at 4:30, so they may not be here after their time. So I'll gather you.